Yo, 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 YouTube, what is up? Welcome to the BK Lounge. It is Wednesday, December 18th, 2019, and it is the de facto National Signing Day #1, the first day of the early national signing period in college football. The early period will end on Friday. Of course, you've got the normal National Signing Day in February, but this is it, man. This has become the National Signing Day in college football. I think something like 77% of recruits committed and signed during the early signing period last year, and that number seems to be increasing each and every year. So this has basically become the biggest recruiting day of the college football calendar year, and Texas racked up another top 10 class despite some struggles on the field this year, despite the coaching changes going on under Tom Herman. The Longhorns did a pretty good job considering the circumstances in closing out the early signing period strong. They got 16 signatures today. They got a signature from every commitment from this 2020 class. So we'll get into some of the details of the class in a second, but the biggest story surrounding the University of Texas today was the double birds shown by Tom Herman on Longhorn Network this morning. He flipped off the LHN cameras in the war room or the boardroom, whatever they call this, down on campus. This was on national TV this morning, and Tom Herman, for some reason, looked directly at an LHN camera and decided to go. See, I'm not going to do it. I don't want any screenshots. I don't want to get in trouble. I don't want you guys to have this on me moving forward. I know I'm not as important as Tom Herman is, and I know it's not going to become a national story, but I'm not even going to give you guys the pleasure of allowing that to happen. And right before I went on this video, the great Shannon Sweeney over at AM 1300 The Zone, she texted me and she said, "Be careful what you do during your YouTube stream. You're on camera, no double birds." Thank you, Shannon. I appreciate the advice. I'm not going to let it happen, but Tom Herman let it happen this morning for some reason, and we'll get to his explanation that he gave during his press conference this afternoon. But for some reason, Tom Herman looked directly at the LHN cameras and gave the double birds 2 middle fingers up. And I think Brian Carrington might have done it for a second as well. Just a weird bit from Tom Herman, and I'll be honest, that I woke up to that this morning. That happened before I woke up. I think I woke up at 9 a.m. today, which, yes, that is very nice. Very lucky to be able to do that. But I open up Twitter because I'm very millennial when it comes to the fact that I have to check every social media account that I have before I leave bed in the morning. I would probably get another half an hour of sleep if I didn't just stare at my phone right when I wake up, but I feel like that's what most normal people do these days. But I open up Twitter, and someone had tagged me in the video, a video of Longhorn Network and Tom Herman giving the double middle fingers to the cameras on Longhorn Network. And of course, I'm sure Tom Herman didn't realize that it was on live television and the cameras were hot when he did it, but they were, and it happened, and obviously that became a major headline surrounding the University of Texas and really the college football world. A couple of thoughts on that. Look, for me, when I saw the video for the first time, I started laughing hysterically. I thought it was hilariously great. I really enjoyed it. I got a kick out of it. I'm a guy, you guys know me from these YouTube hits. If you listen to me on the radio, if you follow me on Twitter, you know I don't take life too seriously. I don't take things too seriously. And it was so surprising. It was such a shock, but I found it kind of hilarious. Maybe that's the mid-20-year-old. I still got some immaturity, perhaps. Maybe that's what it was. I didn't think it was that big of a deal, but I realized right away that this was going to become a national story. This was going to go viral, and the optics of this were not very good for Tom Herman and were not very good for the University of Texas. You know, whether you think it's no big deal or a big deal, this is not what Tom Herman needs right now, because he is not a very popular man amongst Texas Longhorn fans, and he is one of the laughingstocks of the college football world. You know, OU fans, A&M fans, fans across college football enjoy picking on blue blood programs when they're down. That has obviously been the case with Texas for the last decade, and Tom Herman's got a very brash personality. You know, he rubbed a lot of folks the wrong way in his first year at the University of Texas when he did the Drew Lock secure the bag celebration after the Longhorns beat Mizzou in the Texas Bowl. That went viral a little bit. I don't think Longhorn fans had much of an issue with that, but the rest of the country was like, all right, that's a little immature, that's a little classless. Like, when have you ever seen a head coach do something like that on the sideline? Right? We see coaches celebrate with their players and dance with their players in the locker room after games like that, but very rare where you would see a coach mock another player, an opposing player celebration while still on the sideline, while looking over to the opposing sideline. That rubs some folks the wrong way. And it's just Tom Herman's personality in general. He's got a little arrogance to him. He's got a little brashness to him, and it rubs some people the wrong way. And it rubs Texas fans the wrong way when he's not winning games, right? I mean, Rod Babers made this point on the Rodcast on the Horn today, and I agree 100%. If this had happened last year, like with Texas coming off of a 10-win season, off of a Sugar Bowl victory, I don't think Longhorn fans would be griping too much. Like if Texas went 11-1, 12-0 this year, and Tom Herman was winning games and everybody loved him, then I think a lot of Longhorn fans, maybe not fans from across the country, but I think a lot of Longhorn fans would be more accepting of the gesture from Tom Herman this morning. But the fact that this team had a disappointing year, 7-5 in year 3 under Tom Herman, a big step back, a big letdown considering all the expectations for this team going into 2019. I think that added a little bit of salt to the wound for Texas fans. And man, it's something I've never seen before. I've never seen a coach at any level look directly at cameras and give a bird, let alone 2 birds. I mean, there's that famous Ditka picture from way back in the 80s when he was coaching the Bears where a photographer, I don't think that was on camera. I just gave the bird in the corner. Hopefully you guys didn't see that. But he was like giving a photographer the bird, which is like an all-time classic picture. But outside of that, I'm not sure there's another example. And if you guys want to hit me in the live chat, maybe I'm wrong, but I don't know if we've ever seen something like that. The optics just aren't very good. It's not what Tom Herman needs. It's not what the University of Texas needs right now. This isn't a all pub is good pub type of situation. Like Texas did not need this. Tom Herman did not need this. And that brings me to the excuse, or that brings us to the excuse that Tom Herman gave. So after that happened this morning, my first thought really became, okay, Tom Herman's got a press conference at 3 o'clock. For National Signing Day, right? He would have had it regardless of if the double bird incident happened. The press conference happens at 3. How does Tom Herman address the situation? Because Tom Herman has social media and people told him that everybody saw what he did. He had to do something. And I figured, I didn't think about it. I figured someone was going to ask the question. But Tom Herman, I think, did the right thing by getting out in front of it, by addressing it in his opening statement. But what Tom Herman had to say, I don't know if you believe it or not. I don't know if it makes it acceptable. But what Tom Herman had to say to open up his press conference today, he said he was telling a story about his first Red River shootout experience that he dealt with fans of Oklahoma when he was driving into the Cotton Bowl for the first time, into the State Fair. And he was telling the story, and that was part of the story, that OU fans were given the double bird as Tom Herman arrived at the Cotton Bowl. Said he was joking around, and that was his first experience with Oklahoma fans. I don't know. I mean, I'm kind of torn on whether or not this is a good excuse or not. Like, part of me is just like, man, just apologize for the unprofessionalism and move on. Maybe that makes it a bigger story by taking a shot at Oklahoma and saying, it's their fault. It's OU fans. I was just trying to do what OU fans did. Like, I don't know if that's a good excuse. Now, maybe that's true. I'm not sure it's true. The fact that Brian Carrington looked into the camera and also gave a middle finger is like, well, was Brian Carrington saying the same story? Like, why did he do that? If you were telling the story, Tom, why did Brian Carrington look to the camera and give the finger too? He wasn't there when you were 20 years ago at the Cotton Bowl. What's that about? So I don't know if I believe that. My guess it was kind of like a prepared statement that Tom Herman put together, and he figured, okay, this might let me off the hook. This might win me over in the hearts of some Longhorn fans if I just blame it on Oklahoma and say that I was telling a story. But, man, I'll be honest, I think that's doubling down a little bit on the immaturity of this whole situation. All right, what Tom Herman did, I mean, he's kind of like a man-child, man. He's kind of like a man-child. Now, he's a player's coach. He wants to relate to players. He wants to get along with players, and that's cool. I'm totally fine with that. There's some great players, coaches out there in college football, but man, that just seems a little immature. Like, you can't do that if you're the head coach at the University of Texas. It's just bad optics. And Tom Herman last week, not even 7 days ago, at the Alamo Bowl press conference down in San Antonio, he talked about wanting to be more of a CEO of this Texas football program. What he did today is not what CEOs do. I mean, it's not very professional what Tom Herman did today. Once again, I don't think it's that big of a deal. I'm not going to lose any sleep over it. But it's just another thing that Tom Herman did. I mean, you combine that with the secure the bag celebration. You combine that with headbutting some of the players without a helmet before the game against Baylor this year. It's stuff that maybe you can get away with if your team is winning games. But when you're not winning games and you do stuff like this, it just looks dumb. And man, it's honestly a pretty even split amongst Longhorn fans, at least from looking at the text line during the show today and looking at Twitter. It feels like some Longhorn fans, like half the Longhorn fans, are like, man, this is no big deal. It's whatever. It was funny. Why are you offended by this? And then the other half of Longhorn fans who are just like, man, to hell with this guy. Screw this guy. Why'd he do that? And I think there's a pretty obvious correlation between your opinion on the Double Birds and your opinion of Tom Herman, right? The folks saying, it's no big deal. Those are the people who think Tom Herman is still the right guy to be the head coach at the University of Texas and believe that he's the guy who's going to turn this program around. And I think the folks who are super upset by the Double Birds are pretty fed up with Tom Herman and aren't thrilled with the results that we've gotten here in Austin in the 3 years of the Tom Herman era and don't think that he's the guy anymore. Just a crazy situation, man. It's created all sorts of controversy on Twitter amongst Longhorn fans today. Not something I figured we were going to have to talk about on National Signing Day. This is supposed to be a celebration of all the student athletes continuing their academic and athletic careers. This was supposed to be a big day for the University of Texas, and it still is. Once again, I mean, in the long term, the big story here is that Texas was still able to secure a top 10 class despite the record, despite the changes going on this coaching staff. You got to credit Tom Herman and Brian Carrington and the rest of this staff for making sure they were able to solidify their 16 commitments and get all 16 of those guys to sign and fax in their LOIs today. Now, Texas has lost 7 commitments over the last couple of months. That's not great. You don't want to lose any, but the fact that Tom Herman was able to secure a top 10 class, once again, despite the struggles and despite not naming a defensive coordinator until 2 days ago and not having an offensive coordinator right now, I think you have to give him a little bit of credit for that. Now, it shouldn't be too difficult to recruit to a place like UT, and this is the worst recruiting class Tom Herman has had in the last 3 years, but there's still a couple of months left. There's still 2 days left in the early signing period, and then, of course, the old National Signing Day, which happens on February 20th. There's plenty of time for Tom Herman to ink a couple of more signatures to this class, and he talked about that today during his press conference, saying there's still some guys out there that we are looking at and that we hope to add, and there's some big names that we'll get to in a second. But I'll check the live chat before we move on to the recruiting aspect of what took place today and running down some of the signees now that they're official for the University of Texas. It looks like I'm freezing a little bit. I'm trying to check the live chat. Maybe my internet's not working so great tonight. Yes, recording in my bathroom, as always. Very nice area, man. It's great. All right. Yeah, a lot of double bird emojis going on. Oh, why was Herman wearing a Carolina blue blazer today? Thank you for that question, CB. This is a theory. I'm a conspiracy theorist guy when it comes to sports and when it comes to life in general. Maybe this isn't that much of a conspiracy. This isn't that off the wall. This isn't that crazy, I don't think. But, man, I am pretty damn convinced that Tom Herman only dressed up because of what happened this morning. Like, Tom Herman wore a blazer, he wore a button-up shirt, he wore nice pants. I'm only convinced he did that because he wanted to send a message to this fan base and send a message to the college football world and maybe to some recruits and their families that, yeah, I am a professional and I am mature. So don't judge me on what happened this morning. Like, this is who I am. Because I went back and I was like, all right, maybe I'm reaching a little bit with this. But I went back and looked at all of the previous National Signing Day press conferences that Tom Herman has done since taking over at the University of Texas, whether they were in December, whether they were in February, and he's never dressed up nearly as much as he dressed up today. So I'm telling you, my thought is if that incident didn't happen this morning, Tom Herman is wearing a UT polo or a pullover and a hat. I really think he tried to look a little bit nicer to help cover for him. And he probably knew that, yeah, whatever I say, it's going to be on national TV, on the Longhorn Network. It's going to be all over Twitter, all over ESPN, all over everywhere. I got to at least look nice when I give this apology statement and when I talk to our fans and when I talk to people this afternoon. I really think that's what went into the get up today. Once again, maybe I'm a conspiracy theorist. Maybe I'm overreacting to this. But once again, we're talking about it a lot, right? We're talking about it a lot. I don't think it's that big of a deal, but I knew as soon as it happened that it was going to become a national story. Edward says, for being a Mensa member, Tom has no problem acting like a D-bag at times. Yeah, he's got some arrogance to him. He's got some brashness to him. And when you're not winning games, that doesn't work. You really can't get away with stuff like that. I mean, look at Jim Harbaugh up at Michigan. Like, their fans are fed up with him. He's actually had more success than Tom Herman has, but he has that personality to him. And when you're not having the success that you're expected to have, then people start to turn on you pretty quick. And the narrative surrounding Tom Herman has changed a lot over the last 350 days since the Sugar Bowl on January 1st. Bama Texan says, I'm still on board with Tom, but I honestly feel like he's a stain on the Texas brand. It's interesting. Once again, not good optics, not a good look, not something you need to be doing if you're the head coach at the University of Texas. The criticism is warranted. It is deserved towards Tom Herman today, and he's a little bit arrogant, man. I mean, it is a bad look and a little bit of an embarrassment to the University of Texas. Just not something UT needed. Michael voicing his displeasure towards Tom Herman. He is a liar and a Dumas. Anyone that thinks he's the right guy, please step away from the university. Maybe I have to step away from the university. I don't know. I mean, I still have faith in Tom Herman. That sure as hell is not going to change based off of a middle finger to a camera on National Signing Day. Maybe I'm wrong. I'll admit it if I'm wrong. I thought Tom Herman was a great hire from day one, and I'm going to stick with my take that he is the right guy to turn this program around. But look, there's no doubt his seat is warm, and if he doesn't figure some things out and improve relatively dramatically in 2020, then he's not going to be the head coach at Texas football moving forward, moving beyond this year. It is as simple as that. L5P Denali says, so has no one ever thrown up the birds, find something else to gripe about? People just love to find something to bitch about when they do the same thing. Yeah, that's why it's my job. This is my job to talk about stuff like this, man. This sparks conversation. It ignites conversation. I'm not losing any sleep over this. I don't consider myself like the most morally great person out there. I talk about it all the time. If you know me, I mean, I'll never act like I'm morally above anybody else. And yeah, I've given the double birds plenty of times in my life. I'm not going to sit here and act like I haven't. But I'm not the head coach at the University of Texas. All right, that's where the parallels kind of stop, with a normal person and a guy who's the head coach at the University of Texas. I mean, Tom Herman, you could argue, is like the third most important person in the state. Like, you got the governor, you've got the head coach of the Dallas Cowboys, and you have the head coach of the University of Texas. Like, he's in the conversation for most talked about, most Googled, most important. Like, he's there. And you got to be smarter than that, man. You have to, if there's cameras in the room, you have to assume they're on or they're going to be on. I'll tell you what, Tom Herman better hope that there's no audio that was picked up by LHN on that camera. Or if there was, you better hope that it's being deleted a la New England Patriots, so he doesn't get in trouble. And so his excuse about talking about what happened to him in his first Red River shootout against Oklahoma 20 years ago, he better hope that no audio comes out that would ruin his story. All right, guys, keep the live chats coming. Appreciate the love, as always. Let's get to the good news, the more positive stuff surrounding the day that it was on the 40 acres. Once again, 16 verbal commitments before today. All 16 signed their LOIs, including Bijan Robinson, who was the last of the 16 to fax over his letter of intent. Scared me a little bit, made me nervous, made some Longhorn fans nervous, but man, Bijan's been pretty steadfast and his commitment to UT over the last couple of weeks. Big time get for Texas, man. I can't even lie. I've been fawning over his highlights for the last couple of hours, his high school highlights out in Arizona. The number 2 running back in the class of 2020. This kid is unbelievably talented. The highest ranked running back recruit the Longhorns have gotten since Jonathan Gray. Hopefully Robinson's able to have a little bit more success at UT than Jonathan Gray did. But just a big get. And Bijan was getting all sorts of looks. He was getting some late phone calls from every school across the country. But sort of old school. And I've been told he's like an old soul, just the way he acts. Stuck with UT all the way. And even though there's no even though there's no coordinator right now on the offensive side of the football for Texas, Bijan Robinson is still coming to UT. That is a big get. And you think about the running back room moving forward at the University of Texas, there's some talent and there is some depth in there. You've got Keontae Ingram, who will be a junior. You've got 2 more years of him. Jordan Whittington, if he ever gets back to 100%, he could be a tremendous impact player in that backfield as well. Of course, Roschon Johnson, who was incredible. I mean, a godsend this year to Texas football, transitioning from quarterback to running back. Now he's got a full offseason in the running back room. He'll be able to put some weight on and actually learn how to play the position. That's great. Danny Young will be back, I think, for another year. Kirk Johnson, I assume he's done, but I don't know. Somehow, some way, that guy might be a part of this program for like his 12th year. That guy's living the dream, man. My God, I wish I could stay in college as long as Kirk Johnson has. But and then you throw Bijan Robinson into the mix. And maybe Darian Brown, too. A 2019 kid who had some serious health problems, had a stroke last year, and we were never sure if he'd be medically cleared to play football ever again. Well, apparently that happened earlier this week, which is great news. I mean, just for him as a human being, that's awesome. But the fact that he might be able to play football again at UT and be a contributor is great. I don't know what you could expect from him, but that's great news right there. The running back room is stacked, and Bijan Robinson might have more potential and a higher ceiling than any of those guys. That is a big-time get for Tom Herman, and man, felt a whole hell of a lot better once that fax came in today. The 2 quarterbacks, you got to be excited about them as well. You need to recruit quarterbacks in this day and age, man, because of the advent of the transfer portal. I mean, you see prime-time quarterbacks transfer. They leave programs year after year after year. It happened at Texas with Cameron Rising going to Utah. I mean, I don't want to predict anybody transferring, but that might happen. So you've got to add 2 quarterbacks in every class every year. Now, Sam Ehlinger will be back. He'll be a senior. He's the obvious guy for next year. But then after that, you assume Hudson Card and Jaquindon Jackson are going to redshirt their freshman seasons. Then they'll be in the competition with Casey Thompson. Like, you've got a good competition with some real talent coming to the quarterback room, and that's a good thing. We know this program was in quarterback purgatory for about a decade. Sam Ehlinger helping to bring them out, and then you've got some guys waiting in the wing that will hopefully pick up where number 11 leaves off after his Texas career. Hudson Card, incredibly talented. I got to watch him in person a couple of times this year. Dual threat guy, not a super fast runner. I think he's a little bit faster than Sam Ehlinger, but he's got a great arm. Started his career playing wide receiver, so that kind of talks about his athleticism. He was a sophomore varsity wide receiver for Lake Travis, and he's got a talented arm, though, man. I really think he's good enough to be quarterback at the next level, and I feel the same way with Jaquindon Jackson. Even though he's technically an athlete, if you look at the recruiting services, ESPN 24/7, not a lot of schools, not a lot of high-profile schools were willing to recruit Jaquindon Jackson as a quarterback, but Tom Herman was. He got the pledge from Jackson early, and I think he's going to be an impact player. And he's got a great arm. Just watching some games at Duncanville this year, a great athlete as well, and I think he kind of fits the mold of what Tom Herman is looking for a quarterback. When you think about Tom Herman's most successful years as a coordinator and head coach, you look at Ohio State with J.T. Barrett, with Braxton Miller, with Cardale Jones. You look at Houston with Greg Ward Jr., like dual threat guys who can really run. And I know Sam's a dual threat guy, but he's not a breakaway speed type of guy. I think Hudson Card and Jaquindon Jackson can be those type of guys, and they could be a really good fit for the Tom Herman offense, if it's still a Tom Herman offense, right? I guess that depends on what offensive coordinator he ultimately hires going into next season. But man, I mean, Jaquindon Jackson, the highest quarterback recruit for Texas since Garrett Gilbert. Hopefully Jackson turns out a little bit better. And Hudson Card is actually ranked higher than Jackson is on 24/7. So these are 2 great gets, the 2 top quarterbacks in the state of Texas. I'm pumped, man. I am pumped for those guys. And obviously rough news for Jackson, a torn ACL that he suffered in Duncanville's playoff game against Rockwall last week. Hate it for the kid. Won't be able to play in the state championship rematch against North Shore this weekend, but he should be good to go for next year at UT. He'll probably redshirt anyways, but not to be conceited, man. That's a bummer for Jackson and his family. I know how much that guy's been working to get another shot at Galena Park North Shore, and I hate it for him and his family that he won't get that opportunity this weekend up at Jerry World. A couple of other guys to talk about. Vernon Broughton, one of the top defensive linemen in the state. Really, really talented player out of the Houston area. I think Cy Ridge is his high school. That's a big get. I mean, that guy's got damn near an NFL body right now, and I think he'll fit really, really well into the 4-down front system that Chris Ash is going to bring to the table. I'm not sure how much you can expect true freshmen to be impact players right away and how much playing time these guys are going to get right away. But, man, if there's anybody, there may be a couple of guys, but Vernon Broughton comes to the top of my list of guys who I really think could make an impact as soon as they step foot on the 40 acres. This was a big-time get for the Longhorns. This team has needed some war daddies up front, and I think Vernon Broughton can be that guy for this program. I feel the same way about Prince Dorba, who's more of an outside guy, defensive end, outside linebacker, hybrid type of player, probably a D-end in this Chris Ash system, but the kid out of Highland Park, my rival high school, man. I'm excited for him. That's another big get, another top defensive lineman. So you got one of the best interior D linemen in the state and one of the best exterior defensive linemen in the state as well. Have to be excited about that guy. We had Justin Wells of InsideTexas.com on the radio show today. He joins us every Wednesday, always drops some good nugs. And I kind of asked him, I did ask him for a kind of under-the-radar player that Texas signed today, because everyone's talking about Robinson and the two quarterbacks and Broughton and Dorba and those guys I just mentioned, but maybe somebody who isn't getting the high 4-star or 5-star treatment on the websites, but a guy who you think could be a real impact player at UT. And he mentioned Jaron Thompson, the safety out of Lufkin, Texas, the 4-star. And just hearing Justin talk about the type of playmaker that he is, he's a ball hawk, apparently a great kid as well. I'm excited about that guy. And once again, Chris Ash, we talked about this in the video we did on Monday. Chris Ash was a safety in college, and he coached defensive backs for nearly a decade before he became a defensive coordinator at Wisconsin back in 2011, his first DC job. I'm excited with all of the returning talent and all of the new talent coming into this defensive backfield, pairing that up with a coach that is D-back oriented. I don't want to start saying DBU again for Texas because there's a lot of work for the Longhorns to do back there to get into that conversation again. But that excites me moving forward. There's a lot of talented corners and safeties in this class with Xavier Alford, Keaton Crawford, the corner as well, and Jaron Thompson, just to name a few. There's a lot of big-time talented pieces that Texas was able to sign. And perhaps the most important position that the Longhorns took care of business on today was the offensive line. I mean, I talk about it ad nauseum on these videos, on the radio show. Football games are won and lost in the trenches, man. It's the skill players, it's the star players that get all of the headlines, all of the glitz, all of the glam, but you don't win football games if you don't win up front. And the Longhorns got 4 really, really talented offensive linemen today, 2 inside guys and 2 outside guys, including the number 1 guard, I believe, in the country, if I'm not mistaken, with Jake Majors out of Prosper, a guy who could play center as well. There's a thought that maybe he could be like the next Zach Shackelford, maybe a 3-year type of starter, maybe a 4-year type of starter at UT. But, the offensive line has really been a problem for this program over the last decade. It's gotten better over the last couple of years with Connor Williams, and this offensive line was and really good the first half of the year, kind of the second half of the season, but there's more talent on this offensive line overall than there has been in a long time. Like, everybody points to the quarterback position for why Texas has sucked over the last decade, but you can also look to the offensive line. I mean, in between 2008 and Connor Williams, Texas had nobody drafted in the offensive line room. Nobody drafted, not first round, not second round. They had nobody drafted in the 7-round NFL draft from 2008 to 2017. Tony Hills was the last guy drafted before Connor Williams. I mean, that's a decade span right there without having an offensive line drafted from the University of Texas. That is a joke, and that's a big reason why this program was winning 5 or 6 games a year, had 4 losing seasons over the last decade. You've got to get the big boys up front taken care of. Texas got 4 offensive line signees today, only 2 on the defensive end. We gave you those names, but I think more are coming. Alfred Collins, that's a big get out of the Bastrop area, Cedar Creek High School. Didn't sign today. He's going to commit during the Army All-America game in January. That's a guy that Texas needs to get right there, man. And I think the Longhorns are in good position, but we'll see how it goes. All right, I'm going to check the chat before I get out of here. Mavs Celtics on ESPN tonight. The Luka-less Mavs. I'm excited to watch that. All right, man. Appreciate the love, guys. Appreciate you guys watching. Always appreciate the comments. You make this fun and easy for me. Let me scroll up a little bit, making sure I'm not missing anything. Wondering how long of a leash CDC has with Tom, seeing he didn't hire Tom. Yeah, good question, Edward. I mean, Chris Del Conte did not technically hire Tom Herman, but I think it's important to note that CDC did give Tom Herman the extension he got after year 1. After last year. So, yeah, CDC didn't hire Tom Herman technically, but he did extend him. He did give him a raise and a longer contract. So, CDC doesn't take a whole lot of S. He knows football is his moneymaker. He's trying to build a new south end zone. He's trying to build a new basketball stadium, and you get that money from the success of the football program. So if things don't turn around for Tom Herman, then yeah, CDC is not going to just give Herman years just to give him years. 2020, you need to see some signs of improvement, and if it's not there, Tom Herman could be 4 and done. And if it's not a great year next year, then Tom Herman's seat could be red hot going into 2021. But, we haven't seen CDC fire anybody yet. I think he had the chance to get rid of Shaka Smart after last basketball season, decided to give Shaka another year, but that's basketball, man. I mean, most people aren't like me where they care about Texas basketball nearly as much as Texas football, right? I mean, everybody knows Texas football is the king. If you had the results like Shaka Smart for the amount of years like Shaka Smart, if you translate that to football, I think that makes sense. Shaka Smart wouldn't still be here if he was the head coach for Texas football, or if the expectations for basketball were as high as they were for Texas football. I hope that makes sense. I don't know. Sorry if it doesn't. My computer's about to die, so I'm trying to blast through these pretty quick. All right. There was probably audio of the double bird. Yeah, I bet there was audio of the double bird incident from Tom Herman this morning. I don't think we're ever going to see it. I'm gonna try to talk to my LHN buddies and see if I can find it, but I'll probably be sworn to secrecy on that deal, unfortunately, for you guys. And hell, they might not even show it to me. I shouldn't act like I'm that important. We have out-recruited everyone by a wide margin. Yeah, Texas has recruited better than anybody in this conference. Now, technically, Texas it's not finished yet, but right now Texas has a worse class than Oklahoma does. But the Longhorns have recruited really well over the last decade. Plus, the problem has been talent development at UT. There's no doubt about that, and that's what Chris Ash has to do, and that's what the new offensive coordinator has to do, and all the new position coaches at UT have to do. They have to find a way to develop the talent. I know there's folks who like Texas football who are like, well, are they really that talented because they're not winning games? No, talent development is important. Like, you don't win championships without recruiting high-level talent. I give this stat all the time. I gave it on the radio today. I'll give it to you guys right now. Every national champion in college football, except for one, since 1996, has had multiple top 10 recruiting classes within the 4 years of winning their national championship. So every national champion, except for one, since 1996, has had multiple top 10 recruiting classes on campus when they won their national title. The only exception to that was Oklahoma in 2000. So every championship winner since then, multiple top 10 recruiting classes on campus. So I know a lot of folks try to poo-poo the idea that National Signing Day and recruiting matters and stars matter. And sure, there's plenty of individual examples out there of under-recruited guys, of one-star, zero-star guys who turn into NFL Pro Bowlers. That's awesome. That's great. This should not be a discouraging day for you if you are a student athlete. But if we're talking team success, you don't win championships in this sport unless you clean up on National Signing Day. But just because you recruit well doesn't mean you're going to win championships. Case in point, the Texas Longhorns over the last decade. Sam better lay off the interceptions because he's got a gunslinger right behind him. Hudson Card. Yeah, I mean, Sam's going to be the guy next year. I hope that's not a debate Longhorn fans are having. I know it was a little bit of a disappointing second half of the year for Sam Ehlinger, but he didn't get a whole lot of help from his coaches, from the guys around him. I've got faith that Sam's going to bounce back in 2020, but I am curious to see how the backup quarterback race works because Hudson Card will be an early enrollee. So does he have a shot to beat out Casey Thompson for QB2 for 2020? That is something to look out for. But yeah, both quarterbacks are studs, man. You got to be excited about those guys if you are Texas. L5P Denali says, last year, our 10-win season, we won 7 games by a touchdown or less. I think we played about the same level as last year. How do we put the talent together? Yeah, that was a red flag for me for Texas football. Now, I did pick this team to be 9-3 this year, so I was wrong. But, man, even 9-3 was less optimistic than a lot of Longhorn fans and even national pundits out there. But it's hard to sustain success like that, right? If your point differential isn't high and if you're winning a lot of one-possession games, like there's only a couple of plays here or there that determines those games. It's tough to sustain that year over year over year. Like that concerns me about Baylor a little bit. And I think Matt Rule's a hell of a coach, but because Baylor has won so many one-possession games this year, like I don't think they're going to be that good or as good next year. I'll eat my words if I'm wrong. But 2 stats that generally don't translate from year to year are one-possession games, your record in one-possession games, and also your turnover margin. Like, if you have an absurd turnover margin one year, that is so hard to replicate. And if you're winning games because you're winning the turnover battle week in and week out, that's really hard to do over the course of multiple seasons. So, yeah, maybe we should have seen that coming. That was one red flag for me about Texas going into this year, how many one-possession games they had won last year. I think they were 7-3 in one-possession games a season ago. And what were 3-3 this year? 3-3 this year? I think that's right. I'm pretty sure that's what it was going into Baylor, and that was not a one-possession game, and Texas Tech was not a one-possession game. So, yeah, I think Texas was 3-3 in those one-score games after going 7-3 a year ago. Broughton paired with Coburn. Look out. Yeah, I mean, there's talent on this team, guys. There's talent on this team. And this departing senior class, there weren't a whole lot of guys. Weren't a whole lot of big-time contributors. Now, those guys are going to be missed, especially wide receiver position, guys like Devin Duvernay and Colin Johnson. Malcolm Roach, Zach Shackelford. Those guys are important players, but there's not a whole lot. It wasn't a big senior class. It wasn't a whole lot of guys that stuck around once the coaching change was made. And honestly, it wasn't a huge recruiting class from the jump because of the coaching transition from Charlie Strong to Tom Herman. So you add in all of the talented guys in the 2020 class, combined with 3 top 10 recruiting classes that Texas has brought in over the last couple of years, then, yeah, there's a lot of talent here. You just have to develop. But, man, you could think of some crazy scenarios in which Texas could be a Big 12 championship contending team and maybe even more than that next year. The talent is there. They just need to be developed. I don't know if you can do that in 1 year. I don't know if you can overcome the ineptitude that was done by this coaching staff this year, but we'll see, man. We will see. I'm not, even me as the eternal pessimist, I can't imagine this team going in 7-5 this year, but hell, who knows with Texas football in this decade. All right, guys, my computer's at like 8%. I can already see myself lagging and slowing down. OC update, still not a whole lot of information. I realized I put that on the ticker, so I'll mention that. I've talked to so many different people, and depends on who you ask. Someone else will tell me that this guy's the favorite. Someone will tell me that guy's the favorite. It doesn't really feel like anybody has a beat on who Tom Herman is really targeting right now for the OC search. It felt like it was Graham Harrell. Then Tom Herman kind of got cold feet on that whole deal. Graham Harrell signs the extension at USC. Now nobody's really sure what's going to happen. Chip Long, that's my first choice. That is the biggest name that's out there, the recently fired Notre Dame OC. But, man, Notre Dame was 32-6 in Chip Long's 3 years as the offensive coordinator. They put up 37 points per game this year. Ian Book became a really, really good weapon. I think Sam Ehlinger's better than Ian Book. I think Texas next year has more talent on offense than Notre Dame had this year. Chip Long had a lot of success. I think he's kind of a little bit of a prick just based off the reading. Don't quote me on that, just based off the reading that I've done about why he was fired by Brian Kelly. And yeah, if Brian Kelly thinks you're a prick, then that's got to be next level stuff, because Brian Kelly is regarded as one of the bigger ones in the college football world. But he's the biggest name out there. But man, there's a whole lot of names, whether it's Longo at North Carolina, Messingham at Kansas State, the Juricic at Ohio State, maybe Sean Gleason at Oklahoma State. Like, those are names that I'm hearing. Those are the names you guys are hearing if you're reading those insider sites. But man, I don't know. Chip Long is the guy I want. I would like to think he's the favorite because I think his philosophy fits what Tom Herman wants to do. And I know Tom Herman, his job isn't to really care about what Texas fans want, but man, he could use a little shot in the arm after what happened today and after what happened this season. He could use a little vote of confidence from this fan base. He could use a little bit of boost and optimism, and I think Chip Long would provide that. Maybe not as much as Graham Harrell or Joe Brady, but more than a lot of the other reported names that are out there to fill this OC vacancy at Texas. But yeah, I think Chip Long is the guy that I want. I think he'd be the best fit. He's a big-time RPO guy. And man, I'm completely freezing. My computer is killing me here. So I'm going to end this video for the night. Appreciate the love, guys, as always. Thanks so much for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe. You might be watching this part of the video in slow motion or super fast motion, depending on the buffering. But spread the word. Always appreciate the love. Listen to the show. Follow me on Twitter. And we'll do another one of these very soon. Happy holidays to you and yours. Until next time, thank you all for watching. Y'all have a great night. Hook 'em.